My next guest is running for the Ward 2 council seat in Norfolk, Nebraska. Frank, thanks for making time to be here today.
You bet. Thank you guys for having me.
No problem. I'm Zach Miller with my co-host Vance Kole.
Nice to meet you, Frank.
Nice to meet you.
And we are touching base with Frank Arens today. Let's get a little background from you to start with. Where are you originally from? You originally from Norfolk?
No, I'm originally from Hartington.
Okay.
Yeah. Went to school at Hartington Cedar Catholic up there. Born and raised there. Grew up on a farm outside of Hartington. Went to college at Kearney, then moved to Omaha, then moved to Norfolk. Probably, I think it's right around 1990. So been here about 34 years. And then my wife is born and raised here in Norfolk.
Okay. That's good. I didn't realize that either. I don't know if you guys came together or how that kind of, you guys met here in Norfolk?
We did.
Good. So what do you do for a living, Frank?
I'm an independent insurance agent, and that's kind of my full-time job. And as a part-time, my wife is a realtor, so I help her out. I'm a licensed realtor also in the state of Nebraska. So I help her out on the nights and weekends a little bit.
That's good. That's a lot of courses to take. A lot of licenses.
A lot of licenses, I agree. And a lot of continuing.
I was just going to say, that's a lot of continuing education for you. So it keeps you guys kind of busy on your toes.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Housing market obviously has been crazy the last couple of years.
About as crazy as the insurance market right now?
I don't think it's that crazy. The insurance field right now is just incredibly tough.
Yeah, it is.
That's something we have in common.
It is something we have in common. It's a lot of fun right now, I'll tell you that.
It's tough for everybody. I wouldn't want to be in your guys' shoes. I know what it's like on my side. And, you guys know both sides. So
yeah, it's
not fun.
It's not a lot of fun. Have you ran previously or served on any other boards, committees, or public office?
Yeah. So I was on the planning commission for 4 years, appointed there by Mayor Sue. I've also been president of the Norfolk Country Club, president of Pheasants Forever program here, member of the Norfolk Board of Realtors. I also did, just as far as civic activities, I did the leadership, Norfolk leadership. I did the Norfolk 101 courses, which I would highly encourage everybody to take those. They're free, but what a great insight to how the city's departments work.
Mm-hmm. Is that the one where they there's 18 to 20 a session where you can go do that, or how?
Where it's what?
Where it's 18 to 20 people a session that go in and go to a different.
I think they hope to get that many. Yeah, but they'll meet it's been a while since I did it, but they'll meet, I think, every couple of weeks or once a month, and they'll tour you through the water department, the transfer station, City Hall. It's just a real eye opener.
Yeah,
great.
I've heard that's a really cool. I have never done it myself. We've talked about, since everybody's been on, a couple people have talked about it, that we should probably go do that as well. That's kind of a cool. I didn't know I didn't realize you did all those different boards and committees and things. That's really cool.
Yeah, thanks. I with the planning commission, I just had I had a little bit of a obligation, I thought, maybe, to, if I'm going to be planning and some of the events for Norfolk, or the zoning of certain things, it's like maybe I should get a little bit better feel as to how this all works.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's good. You wanted to learn a little more too about, not just jumping in and getting to learn both sides of it. And
right.
That's good. That's really good. What about our community is special to you?
Well, I mean, I think it's special because obviously I have family here. My wife's family is here, and quite honestly, almost all of them are here. We have a lot of good friends here. I think just overall, the makeup of the people, just good people. obviously I'm a little biased. I grew up in Northeast Nebraska, so I'm partial to the people that are here, but I would say that's probably what makes it the most special to me.
That's good. We get that a lot too. We get the Nebraska nice,
It-
people in the community are really good.
Yeah. I mean, it's there. You can see it.
Yeah, definitely. So what's making you want to run again? Obviously how long have you been in?
So I was elected last term.
Okay.
In 2020. This would be my second term. I really believe that a person kind of has a duty, if you will, to serve your community one way or the other, whether it's a blood drive or, a school teacher or a volunteer coach. I think my opportunity is with the city. And I think that another 4-year term will just help me. I think I'll become more efficient. I think, I think this has been one of those experiences that I came from the planning commission, had a really good feel as to what the city council was doing. I would attend meetings, but it's a whole nother animal. It's got a budget that's intense. It's got way more departments than just my one that I came from. So those were a lot of the reasons why I wanted to look at council in the first place, is just to get a little bit more diverse, give back a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. We've kind of been told that it takes 2 to 4 years to even completely understand the position. So
for sure. And I think the 2-year is probably a minimum. And that's where I think that having that experience under my belt will be exactly what I need for those next 4 years. Just hit the ground running, right? I mean, but the odd thing is too, every year is different. So what was the same, or what was on the agenda 3 years ago isn't necessarily what's on there this year. Obviously, you take the flood of 2019, right? Obviously, they're changing their parameters on what's important. Flood levy, right? We got to make sure that's certified. Then you have the pandemic of 2020. It's like every year is different.
Yeah.
But I think if you understand that core, it's going to help you definitely in your next term.
Right. Definitely makes sense. Budget things and all that kind of stuff that kind of run with it. Yeah. And kind of understanding how the city staff and the mayor and the council all kind of work together as kind of a whole.
Right.
Takes a lot to learn.
There's a lot to learn.
Yeah. What are some highlights that make Norfolk stand out to you?
Highlights,
either as a city or as a community, or however you want to answer that.
I look at it as a city. I think the highlights, you have to look at our downtown as a highlight for our community. I know there's always the discussion, is downtown get more than the rest of Norfolk, but you can't ignore the fact that our downtown is doing well. And when I will go out of town, I will hear people talk about, have you been to Norfolk lately? And have you seen it? Well, they're looking primarily at our downtown. And now with Kohl's opening up, obviously it's a little bit more of a retail sales outlook, but it's got to be the highlight of our area.
Definitely. I just saw a post the other day, and this is going to be a different question than you maybe heard before. Josh had put out a post showing like a downtown from it wasn't our city, but from one city from like 4 years ago to where it is now, and taking away the street of downtown. Do you think that that's kind of what's moving forward with taking out the stoplights to the stop signs? Do you think that eventually either the city council or the mayor or somebody around may want to completely shut off traffic down Norfolk Avenue between 6th and 2nd Street?
I don't think so. I would be surprised by that. I mean, the 4th Street, Fifth Street, stop signs are going in right now, I think are going to give us a really pretty good idea on that traffic flow, and we'll follow the lead of, police department's obviously going to be critical in giving us that input. I know they have cameras out there. We'll take a look at all that information, and if that's a case where that stoplight needs to go back in on either one of those, I don't see that street being closed down.
Okay, because that's what kind of the post was taking the whole downtown stretch of street and making that a walking way with trees and things like that. Was kind of what I was like, that's going a little too far maybe, but I don't know.
Yeah, maybe if the city was a little bit bigger, I think
Right.
Omaha would be able to
Support
take
something
a
like
street and close it down, but I'm sure we're quite there.
that. Right. I just wanted to get your opinion
That's
on
kind
that.
of a, it's a thoroughfare yet too.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
want to get from one end of town to another. They
Right.
kind of need to go through Norfolk Avenue,
Correct.
east to west.
Yep. What do you feel Norfolk could improve on?
Yeah.
A few things.
Yeah. I was going to say, does it have to be just one?
No, you can say whatever you want. We got time.
I do think the obvious answer on this, but it's probably the most obvious to me, is streets. We've given a lot in the last couple of years, and dedicated $5 million in the last couple of years. We'll end up spending, I think, 2.5 in 23 and 2.5 million in 24, but that still probably isn't even enough. We've had a lot of public input meetings, and you should see the list of those streets that everybody says, hey, do this street. That's a long list of streets to fix up. And so to me, that's clearly something we need to work on. But it doesn't happen overnight. I mean, I would say we're probably, you're 150 plus miles of streets, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Norfolk. So that's a lot of roads to fix. And if that maintenance, which kind of has been deferred, if that's a situation where that keeps happening, we're really going to be in trouble. So the real question is, do you take a street that has just a little damage on it and it doesn't take much to fix that street money wise? Do you start there so it doesn't get worse? Or do you go to the street that needs to be replaced and handle that one while you let that other one get worse and it costs more to fix it? So it's a real dilemma. And I think it's one that we're faced with every year. And I just don't think enough emphasis can be made on the streets. The other thing I would also look at is, affordable housing. I think is really a hot topic. Obviously, affordable is different to so many different people. The thought process, though, when you come to affordable housing is how can we make it realistic that people get into a home. And I know we've tried a lot of different things. We created changed an ordinance to what we call smaller, tiny homes. We've changed an ordinance where, single family can now have, 2 occupants, 2 residences, if you will, on that same lot. Try to condense the housing a little bit. So we're trying, but I think that's something that definitely needs to be worked on.
We've talked a lot on previous podcasts where you don't see a lot of the starter home. People aren't moving out of the starter homes to either go to the mid or the higher level homes, and that's why there is kind of a housing dilemma too, where you're seeing more people stay in those starter homes and can't get out of those. So then those aren't available for the people that are coming back through. We've also talked about going to the more cookie cutter post World War II, where it's, the smaller, or the tiny home thing.
You're probably going to see more of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is probably, isn't a bad thing, I don't think. But we do have a lot of those districts already, right?
Yeah.
Kind of in town.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, if you got to start off with a smaller home, that's all right.
Right.
I mean,
I agree.
You grow yourself into a bigger home.
Mm-hmm.
I think childcare maybe is another thing that we need to work on.
Yeah.
I don't know how we necessarily work on it by ourselves, because I think it's something that has to be collaboration with others.
Mm-hmm.
I know we did have we've had a few meetings where we're looking at kind of an employer-led nonprofit type of childcare organization put together where, say, for instance, NIM or a Nucor decides they want to lead the charge in putting some childcare together, they would reserve some spots for their company. That's probably a pretty big need out there, I think.
Seems that way, especially in more of the in-homes. There's a lot. It seems like that's needed.
Yeah. I'd like to see more in-home too. I think that's kind of a nice, gentle way to get more childcare out there. But if we have to build a larger facility, and I say we, I don't necessarily mean the city.
Right.
I think as a community, if we need to do that, then some of it definitely needs to be looked at.
I think some of it too is maybe having more conversation. Maybe the cities or people, community members, not necessarily the council or city government. I think more people need to speak up and talk to the state level people and get some regulations changed where things can be done a little simpler, faster, easier. Like my wife runs in-home daycare, so I kind of have an inside track into how difficult.
I should probably let you talk.
Yeah, well, just how difficult it can be to get things accomplished. We actually just ran into a situation, and I've made a few phone calls at the state level. I had a client who had a fire. They run an in-home daycare, and now they're out of that for like 6 months. And to open up another location or just be at a temporary location would take 3 months to have happen.
Frustrating.
I just feel there should be an emergency, a piece of that where there's an emergency process where somebody can come in, the state fire marshal, whoever can come out the next day if they have a temporary location and get them up and going for that loss of income type of thing. But,
right.
Because not only is that loss of income for the provider, that's also puts a damper on the people that
on 10 families
are counting on that in-home daycare.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That parent still needs to go to work.
Yep.
And they need to drop their kid off. What do they do?
Yep. So that's now I have a specific thing that happened that I can kind of reach up to the state and tell them, hey, this is kind of the red tape's kind of ridiculous.
Right.
Anyway, that's my ramble on daycare.
Nope.
But you're right, though. It's definitely needed. Affordable housing is needed. And the streets is kind of a never-ending thing, right?
Never ending.
It's just never going to stop.
I mean, I don't think there's enough money out there to fix all the street needs that we have, but we've got to do it.
But I think, like especially the Benjamin project and things like that, I think we're doing it the correct way now, where we're doing the full infrastructure. I think it's being done in a way that it'll last for quite a while. Whereas maybe some streets weren't previously. Maybe they were done a little too quickly, or however.
Oh yeah, I know that. Like that project we did on Michigan Avenue. That got to a point where the contractor came in and said, hey, we're a little wet down here. This soil isn't really conducive to a great bed for this street to lay on. And so that came back as a change order for us to increase the cost on that. Well, that's not in the budget, right? So how do we do it? Well, we got to do it. And so their solution was to put down what they call a geogrid system, help stabilize that. And you're right, we're doing it the right way. Sometimes that's an additional cost, but if you don't, what's that street going to look like 15 years from now.
It's going to save you for future
For
projects where it can open up for other streets to be done, type of thing, instead of always redoing the same ones over and over again.
Yeah, there's nothing worse. We have a kind of a situation right now. If you go into the Homewood area, it's a fairly new area of town, and you look at the ASR that is in that concrete right now, and you have curbs failing. Golfview up here is failing. Those curbs are failing. Those shouldn't
They're not really that old.
They're not that old. They should not need repairs. And so not only have your regular older street maintenance, now we're taking care of streets that shouldn't need attention.
Which should go to show a lot of people is like cutting costs is fine, but I like to say a lot of times you cut your nose, spite your face, yeah.
Right.
You get what you pay for. You're going to cut, and you're going to get tenfold in the long run. On the back end, it costs way more on the back end to repair it than if you just had that little bit of upfront cost. And I get it. Sometimes you get worried that you're getting the wool pulled over your eyes a little bit by somebody. You get a shady contractor or something, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it's just better to make sure you do it right the first time.
If they explain it right, like the Michigan one, it made perfect sense that, I get that change order. I understand why it's higher.
Yep.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. Anything else on the improving side, or was that those three things where you want to leave it?
I don't know if we have enough time.
That works. What qualities and values make you an effective leader and decision maker?
So I would say that I think I'm a pretty good listener. I think I'm a collaborator. I have a pretty extensive background in mediation and arbitrations. Did it for quite a few years. So I know there's a value to listening to the other side. It's you can have your own opinion on things, but if you don't listen to the other side, you're just not. I don't think you're going to make the right decision.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I think it's the listening part. I would say that the collaboration is for me, it's just kind of second nature. So.
And mediation is kind of an important tool that I think is getting lost in today's time too. You don't hear, that's the first time it's been brought up on the podcast, I think.
Yeah.
That was something I did. I just, the reason why it resonated with me is I did peer mediation in high school and through junior high and high school. And it's an important tool that people need to maybe get back to learning. That kind of goes back. We talk a lot about critical thinking and getting both sides, and it's kind of the same thing that you're saying, but I've never heard it, or nobody's come and said mediation on here before. That's a good term to use. I like that.
And then like your listening is big, because sometimes you can have two people talking and a third party can be listening and say, you both are saying the same thing. You're just both getting frustrated because you're not thinking that you're both being heard the correct way. But your third party can say, hey, I mean, you're basically saying the same thing. You're just changing it just a little bit here, and you're saying this here. Or there could be just a little bit of miscommunication there. And that's so somebody that can listen well and arbitrate or mediate that's a good skill.
Yep.
I couldn't agree more. Not to completely quote Stephen Covey, but one of his better paraphrases that he uses is listen to understand, not with the intent to reply. So I do think it's just a really good way to listen. And I find myself doing that a lot on city council meetings. I'll take a lot of information in, may not necessarily reply right away, but I'm trying to understand it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's hard to do the podcast and listen to not reply, but I try very hard to do that, but it is tough.
It's very tough.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are really good answers for that though. what are your thoughts on the Johnson's Park project with 65% of the project being funded outside of the city? Do you think it was still worth doing?
I do. I do think it was worth doing. I wish it would get done, because then I think people would look at the project and go, "That's nice. It's beautiful.
Right.
I can see what your vision was and where the money was spent,
Or they'll at least forget about it,
or at least forget about it." Right. But that there's so much diversity that a park can give children or adults, or literally the parks are for everyone, right? They're for every citizen that Norfolk has. And if you can go there and play basketball or just sit at a park bench or possibly ice skating, that's, as a city, we owe that to our citizens to give them a place to go and enjoy. I don't know. Think about it. Is there even another park east of First Street? Take away Memorial football field or the skate park. There's nothing on the east end of town that people can use as a park. And, West End, North End has Skyview. South End's got Tazuka. But, at East Side, they needed a park to be proud of.
We haven't heard that one idea. That's a pretty good answer. As far as the funding of the project, do you think, granted the 65% of it was either grant money or other money coming from other places, but it was still a significant amount the city had to put up for it. Do you still, in your eyes, was that still worth it? Or do we not need to spend money? I know you said the park was worth it, but that's kind of where we get at with this question a little bit is, yes, it was mostly funded outside of the city, but do you think, kind of get where I'm...
Yeah, again, I personally think it's giving back.
Okay.
I think it's giving back to the citizens. Yeah, they're paying taxes, right? But if we put X number of dollars back into it and they can benefit from it, I'm not so sure that's a bad trade. It's not like they're never going to see the benefit of that tax money.
Right. Makes sense. Do you think any other parks need looked at?
Oh, I do. So we have a lot of parks.
We do.
I don't know compared to per capita how many, but yeah, we're probably that 13, 14 park. I don't know if that's accurate, but I think it's fairly close.
Might even be more than that. We keep having so many pop up through these podcasts. I'm like, I didn't even know that was there.
And it very well could be. And actually, as part of the planning and development, when I was on that board, when a new development came in, we were really strongly pushing for neighborhood parks to be part of that development, because children should be able to walk to that park and use it and not have to drive 2 miles to get dropped off. So I know that was one thing that we always pushed to try to get those into those developments. The rest of the parks, I think they all do need a facelift, and quite honestly, like I said, I think that's our way of giving back as a city, and I think it's our responsibility. Central Park, I know, is going to go through some improvements here, which are definitely needed. So I've been the Zone after school program. Are you aware of that?
Yep.
So they have a little annual party out there every year, and I've been there the last couple of years, helping out on that night out. And Central Park's kind of in rough shape.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have good grass. The cobblestone sidewalks are treacherous. I think the lighting at the tennis court was probably installed in 1950. I imagine
you can definitely tell it's pretty dimly lit when you just drive by in dusk or whatever.
Right. Basketball court. I know Johnson Park's going to have a new one, but I'm not so sure that couldn't use a little bit of TLC.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that, they do need some attention.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And even just maintenance on some of them too that have been around for a while, not just Central Park, but some of the newer ones too, just keeping them where the grass, so that way it doesn't get like Central Park where the grass gets.
Yeah, well, and I would agree. I mean, Skyview Park, man, that gets, there's a lot of kids there during the day. So I know the maintenance is a big thing, but let's go back to Central Park. So there's no irrigation system. So without that, you can scratch that ground up, put new seed down there. But if you have no water,
right,
you're really not going to keep that thing maintained. It's just going to be another batch of sandbursts, probably.
Right. There's a lot of old trees down there too, so it kind of keeps it pretty shaded. So
it does, and I don't know what's all in the plan. I don't think tree removal's there, but I think it's if you can't get rain on it or you can't get sunlight on it, you're going to probably have to irrigate it in order to keep that looking nice. And so that maintenance is important, but you also have to start with, kind of like we were saying with the roads, you got to do it the right way.
Right.
And I think that the improvements probably are going to require.
But on, like I look at it on a park, you could do incremental improvements as opposed to a full park makeover too.
Don't disagree.
Yeah.
We have to.
Yeah.
We don't have it in the budget to do them all. I do think if we can take one at a time. Are you saying incremental on
each park?
So
like if we're going to use Central Park as an idea, like I just spitballing here, but as opposed to fixing everything at one time, maybe we start with your grass, because that's probably the most important in a park. You want good grass.
I would agree.
So let's start there. You could do irrigation, reseeding, that stuff, get that established. Then you could go and lighting is a really easy, quick, minimal cost type of deal. Like you could just work it in your budget where you're doing your minimal stuff, and then you can you can do some of the other stuff a little bit maintenance wise. You know what I mean? Like just make face makeovers, and then you can rebuild that, and then you could still do that. So if you did incrementally, you could do one park at a time, or like you could do incrementally in multiple parks. You know what I'm saying? And then build them all up together, as opposed to doing a whole park makeover.
Yeah. True. I mean, I think there's always a couple of different ways to approach those, and I don't see why that wouldn't work as well.
I could look at that as that'd be a good thing that would make everybody, you're only focusing on this group of people, or you're only focusing over here. You could say, hey, we're trying to do a little bit everywhere, so we're all growing together, type of thing.
Yeah,
I think that'd be a really good way to sell that.
Question is, would it get lost in the shuffle?
Yeah.
Right.
It's all about messaging.
Yeah.
I mean, you message it the right way.
But would it be easier to just, okay, here's a project, let's just go in and get it done and move on to the next? I don't know, but who comes first, right?
Yep.
Why do they get the new park and
I'm
we
just
don't?
looking at it as where somebody you could minimize that effect, that argument from people by doing it that way.
I don't disagree. And it might be the best way to do it.
Because everybody's going to complain about, and that's human nature. We all feel that way. Like, somebody's not paying attention to me. They're paying attention to this.
Right.
So let's try to make everybody happy a little bit.
Oh, for sure. You can.
Not that it'll work, but we can try.
You can do 10 things right and nobody cares. You do one thing wrong, and
that's how the
people
world
will know
is.
about
That's
it.
just how it is.
Absolutely.
Do you think that the ball fields out at Taha still need looked at?
I do. I think they need to be looked at for a lot of different reasons. I think first thing you look at is economic improvement. If we have those fields and they're capable of hosting tournaments, those tournaments are really big deals.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of money, a lot of ways to show off your community. But I think also if you just want to look locally again for our citizens, I think there needs to be a little bit more diversity in the fields. Like I think I don't go out there and play softball. Used to when I was younger, but I know that there's probably just as many adults as there are children playing leagues, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that we need probably an improvement there.
Yeah. Especially the locker room
larger
spaces
fields.
was kind of a thing too.
Yeah, I mean the locker room, I do like that. I love the collaboration. Again, I'll use that word between Northeast Community College, Norfolk High, and the city to come together and say, "Hey, we all need this. So can we all put a little bit in the pot and get it done?"
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was great. Quite honestly, it probably needs to happen more often in the
Right.
city.
I would agree with you. Sorry. While we are developing downtown, do you feel the rest of the town is getting overlooked? We kind of touched on this a little bit already, but
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we're doing, obviously, that South Norfolk discussions are going on. I think that's kind of a nice thing to start up, because I think that is an area that probably wants to grow and get better. So I think we're looking at them. I think you can look at the youth side of it, and I think we're doing a lot there. The rest of the town, I guess I kind of think the Arts Council, the reason that was set up and formed, right, was to kind of move all of the attention from downtown and spread it out through the city. And I think for that reason, is the rest of the town being overlooked. So I know just in that one small arena, all of a sudden sculptures get set up at 7th and Paswalk and 25th and Benjamin, the owl up there, and you're going to see one that will come in 18th and Paswalk will be installed this year. So I don't think they're being overlooked. I mean, I got to tell you a little story about the owl placement up there. Friend of ours, she had her 3-year-old in the car, and she made her mom drive around the roundabout a couple of times because she wanted to see the owl. She wanted to see that placement up there, which I think is a great placement for it. But even further, she went to her daycare, and when she walked in, "Did you see the owl? Did you see the owl?" And I thought, how neat is that? So one, it's the arts going out around town, but I think it's, to your point though, the rest of the community, I don't think it's being overlooked.
okay. Do you in downtown? We've talked about this on a couple other ones too. We don't mention on all of them, but do you see downtown expanding to like Madison and Brosh a little more than it maybe already is, where you're going to see more things open up, maybe change hands?
Oh, I think so. I think there's, I think you can kind of see it already with that Wayne State housing going in there north of Brosh. I do see that probably happening and connecting a little bit more to that riverfront area.
Maybe getting some
south
facelifts.
to Madison. I don't know. I think Madison's a nice corridor right now. When you got all these stop signs on Norfolk Avenue, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to go down to Madison and but you have one or two stops there. But yeah, I suppose eventually could get down there.
I kind of see
I
that
see
because
it going more north than south initially.
Yeah, I just see that because you're seeing some real estate. I mean, obviously the Norfolk Avenue real estate's obviously there, and it's already been, the facelifts have come in and things like that. I just see that as it's booming, you might see it just expand to some of those buildings that maybe do need facelifts, and they'd be great storefronts, and still within walking distance of downtown. So I think we'll see that in the next, few years.
I think you're right.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see anyway. I think it's a cool thing to talk about. I'm going to skip. I had a question about streets, but we kind of already went through the whole street thing. Okay. Unless there's anything else you want to talk about on streets. What are your thoughts on tax increment financing?
Well, I think if it's used correctly, I think it's a great tool. You know, it's one that is misunderstood a lot on how it works. But you have, and I'm probably a little bit more commercial use for TIF. Me personally, I think that when you can get a sales tax getting generated from that development coming in right now, I think that's a pretty powerful tool. The best example I can give you right now is if you looked at the Kohl's parking lot this weekend and even today, what a fantastic use of that TIF to create that store, and I should say to get that store here. And that's sales tax. That if we want to lower property tax, we need to increase our sales tax, right? So how are we going to increase our sales tax? If we have to use a TIF option to appease that developer to come here, I think it's a tool we need to look at.
I would agree. As long as it makes sense, and you know, most times it has. A lot of people are kind of afraid of the word blighted, you know, blighting a property, and that kind of seems to be the word that kind of is the hot button topic.
Yeah, I'd like to know who came up with the word blighted.
It just sounds gross.
It sounds horrible, right? Yeah, so you have to blight what we consider to be a fairly decent area in order to get TIF, right? So it has to be blighted, and then the TIF can be done. I don't know. It seems like a really odd word to.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. There's a reason for blight and substandard, but yeah.
And Vance, you want to tell your opinion on the agricultural land? Your point of the.
I just don't. Yeah, I don't think agricultural land should be blighted because you can already. I don't think we should be. How do I say it? What did I say last time? I don't think we should be. What's the word? Annexing a bunch of ag land in order to blight it and then TIF it.
Just to get it inside the city limits.
Yeah. I think that's.
If
I don't like
can
that issue.
produce. You know, if it's an agricultural land that can produce
good
goods,
revenue, and
so that's just one thing he wanted to that he brings up sometimes is that when we're blighting valued land like that, you know, high value land.
Yeah, and I don't believe we're necessarily blighting the land. We're not saying the land is worthless. It's just it has to reach this designation, and is the project itself worth it? Not so much is the land worth it.
Right.
You know, so
as a land grab, it's worth it. If we're going to annex it and land grab it, then I mean, it's a land grab. So then it's worth it. So,
and then we also think that at the state level that the boxes are easily checked. So then it always comes to like you guys always, every development's going to come ask for TIF, right? And I think that those boxes are too easily checked. And then it comes down to the council to decide whether it's worth it or not, or whether, you know, that kind of stuff. Do you think that's the case too?
I couldn't agree with you more. That's probably been an issue I've had with those blight studies ever since my time on the planning commission and on the city council. It seems to be a very easy report to come up with. And I didn't make the rules up. The state says this is what you have to do, but you're right. It seems like those boxes are easy to check.
We do hear from, I mean, we've heard you'd still have the chance to say no or yes, or it makes sense or it doesn't make sense. So you do, this state does give you that ability. So I understand
we do have the ability, but you know, when that developer comes in and he checks all these boxes, we may look at them and go, that doesn't make sense to me. But if this, you know, didn't have TIF associated, we couldn't do this development. And you're like, well, they've done their research. They've talked to their bankers. They've done their homework. You know, we can say no, but if if it makes sense and it's used correctly, I think we should vote for it. But if something just kicks in your common sense and says, I don't get it. I don't know why this has to apply here.
It doesn't pass the smell test, as I like to say.
Yeah, maybe that's a better way to phrase it.
Yeah. I was going to ask something else too on that. So you guys do get to vote on it, but it's almost a sales pitch on both sides, right? Because you're wanting more development to come in as a city council, right? To get sales tax revenue, and the city might need it, and they're also trying to sell their piece to you. So it's you know, it's just kind of crazy how it all boils down to that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we don't want to turn down economic development when it shows up, and we work hard to get it. You know, we have a whole division of our staff devoted to that, and for them to come in and say we'd like to bring our business here, but these are a couple of things we would like to see. I think we're doing an injustice not to at least listen to all of those.
Do you think that we scrolled down a little bit, Cole, on that? Do you think that the micro TIF could be used a little more for the affordable housing? Do you think that's something that's maybe not utilized enough?
Well, I would hope so, but I don't know if it fits a great deal of or at least Norfolk right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think you are looking at that 350,000 for a project.
It's up to 350. So you could use it for lower
you could,
price homes.
But we got to bring in that, and it's a real easy process from my understanding is it doesn't require any TIF attorney. You can come in, fill out your forms. But what it does require is that blight word, right? Blight and substandard. So now you got to find blight and substandard in some residential areas. That's really probably a very, very small portion of what's blighted in our community. So
open land too. You got to find open residential.
Open, right? And big enough for someone to, they're not going to use it for a one block or a one lot build.
It'd have to be a development of some sort.
It would. So I think it's got potential. I just don't think it's being utilized. Well, I know it's not being utilized as much as it should.
Has it been used in Norfolk? Do you know?
Not that I know of.
Okay,
I'm probably not the person to ask.
I think we've asked that before, and nobody
really knew
either. So it's kind of that's a tough one. You don't have to give your thoughts on this next one if you don't want to, because not many other people have had a chance to because it wasn't done yet. But what are your thoughts on the Alco area project being put off now?
Well, I think it's unfortunate. You know, guy comes in, has a plan, and you know, and I guess I'm going to go back a little bit on you. Like, so Johnson Park, right? The question is, was it needed and all that? Well, I mean, this guy kind of used that as a reason for why he wanted to be there, because he thought it would complement his development. I don't know. I mean, it's unfortunate it didn't happen. There's probably always more to the decision than what we see.
Right. I just wanted to know what your thoughts were on how that all kind of went down. I know you probably don't want to get in the weeds too much on it, but that's fine. What are your thoughts? And this is a state level thing, but what are your thoughts on the EPIC option? Do you have it? We like talking about it because it gets kind of the conversation going about taxes a little bit.
Well, I mean, the concept itself sounds great, right?
Right.
Get rid of that property tax, income tax, inheritance tax, get rid of that. All sounds good, but ultimately what you take away here, you're going to have to provide here. And so that sales tax, what percentage is that going to be?
They said it's supposed to be below 8%.
About it.
Supposedly.
I hope to dig into it, learn more by the time November comes around. So I feel like a little bit more educated on it. I think that that's a big overhaul for our government to overtake. And so I do think that they're gonna have to study it pretty hard. And if it's feasible, I mean, I know other states have versions of it. So
one of Vance's thoughts on this is that the way it's set up right now would place no tax on groceries. And we feel, and after he's said it a few times, I think if we did add groceries to that list, it would make it a little easier and make it more fair as far as taxes go. Then everybody's, paying their fair share.
I've always felt that everybody has to have groceries. Okay, it doesn't matter who you are. Everybody's gonna buy groceries, so everybody's paying something. You're paying a little bit, even if you're somebody getting WIC or what, I don't even know the term of it, like food stamps or whatever. That comes out like that. What you're getting, you're going to get that tax back on your sales tax on that grocery, anyways. And if somebody has more money or whatever, they buy more groceries and therefore pay more taxes exponentially as we go. So I've always felt that way, that like it's a good start just to get everybody's putting into something. And then if you top on top of it, if you're doing a no income tax and a lower corporate tax, and hopefully that gets more money in everybody's pocket also at the same time. So it's easier. That's just why I really like
think that lower
style.
corporate tax you just hit on it is important.
Yeah.
The grocery tax,
and that's not in Epic. Grocery is not part of
but
Epic.
your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
If you would happen to have input on that and get your way, I think you're going to see every household have a garden in the back, and so
which I'm fine with too. I have no problems with that. I think it's healthier for people. I'm 100% on that.
Couldn't agree more.
So.
So far, my garden's looking pretty good, but the sales tax approach, I firmly believe is a good approach to things, and you are having everybody in the system help contribute to it. And I think that's one of the problems we have right now, even at our state, federal level, is we don't have everybody paying taxes.
10% paying 90%. So
yeah, and I don't know what the latest number is on the people that file, an income tax, but it's an alarming number that don't, and it's
really?
not right. Everybody should be paying a tax.
Something.
Yep.
Right? Doesn't that sound terrible? Everybody should be paying tax, but
I don't think anybody should pay tax. But
right. I know
we're going to get into the weeds here if we do that.
That doesn't sound that great.
Yeah.
But we know what we're getting at.
There's so many that aren't, that it's becoming a burden on the people that are.
Absolutely, it is. Middle class, seems to be,
getting hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hurting pretty bad. Anyway, we don't got to get too far in the weeds on taxes, but we just always like talking about it to see everybody's opinion on how.
Especially, I mean, there's nothing on you guys here in the city, nothing to do with it, but we like to bring it up just to say, I mean, it seems like it's getting a little more steam that people are paying attention to real tax reform.
Well,
that I haven't seen in my lifetime. Really.
Again, we touched on it earlier, but you need to listen. You got to try to understand what it is they're trying to get through.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't say it's a bad idea. Out of every idea, there's something to take out of it.
Yeah, definitely. That's also why we wanted to do these podcasts, is that get everybody's opinion and get the conversation going so people can listen to and maybe learn a little bit more about how some of these things work in city government and state government, and really get to know what's really going on. Because you can't vote for, I don't feel like you can vote for somebody holistically without knowing a little more about what their actual thoughts are on topics.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. How do you feel about the addition to the Norfolk Police Division adding 8,000 square feet?
Yeah, so that's a pretty easy decision, I think, to move forward with that. I think we've all had an opportunity to take a tour of it recently. I've been through it a few times, and it is tight, right? It's like anything, after a certain time frame, you may outgrow a facility, and that's kind of what's happening here. So I think they got some options out there that they're presenting that I think, well, actually, I think they've got it narrowed down.
That sounds like it. Yeah.
But again, we're going to look at using that sales tax. So what I do like about that, again, we're talking Norfolk communities that are all out there that are going to help support that.
Do you feel the 8,000 square feet is enough to get us by for another 40 years?
You know, I asked that question when those plans were first brought in front of us, and they said, yes, we're more than content with what we have in front of you. So, because that was my thought too.
That's what we're worried about.
Yeah.
If we're just doing it just to catch us up,
no,
not get us farther.
So the plans were not. Council didn't come up there and draw and say, okay, we're going to give you this.
Right.
Now they were basically presented to us, right? And in subcommittees and said, here, this is what we want. And that was the exact question I asked is this enough? Is this what you need? And yeah, they're very content with what they've presented.
That's good. Because I feel like people would be okay with adding, 2 more years or 4 more years onto those 4 years of taxes to add more if it was needed.
If it was needed,
anyway.
I agree. That's why it was an important question for me.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And we even talked about maybe doing another building for evidence or putting, other things that they could add to make things life better for themselves too. Not just adding on to the building that we already have, but the evidence seems to be a big pile up.
It is. Evidence room is quite full and it's tight. But, even the current structure of the building, I think you just design it a little different, and I think it would maybe flow a little better. I think a lot is learned after you've been in a facility. What makes more sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that case, your evidence room is on the second floor.
Oh,
why? Why would you not put that down? Because you have some large evidence
right.
you need to put in there. So I think there's things that they can figure out with its expansion and make it work better.
Is there a basement there? Do you know? I guess I've never asked that question.
I don't know. I doubt it, but
Okay.
I don't know that for sure. I know the mechanical room again is on the second floor.
Interesting.
So I would think maybe not.
You just always hear evidence rooms always being in the basement or whatever. So I just didn't really know if there was a basement there or not. No, that's good. I think the police station needs it, and going back to the yes vote. Obviously, it was put through because you guys wanted the vote to be on the citizens, right?
Yeah, that was our vote. Was do you want to move this forward to the election? And I think that was an obvious yes answer. Yeah, we want it to move forward. What was presented to us to move forward, I think that maybe was in question.
Mm-hmm.
But we aren't the ones who are going to try to decide whether that was right or wrong.
Right.
That belonged to the citizens.
Right. And that makes complete sense. Do you feel that it would have passed in the city without the aquatic center?
Yeah, I think it was just, I know why they were doing it. They were just trying to a little something for everybody, right? But once it got over a certain amount that was going to be bonded for this thing, it became a really big project.
Mm-hmm.
And that water aqua center, or whatever it was referred to, I think was a big chunk of that money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some people question whether they should have been individual, vote for roads, vote for streets, vote for the
That's
water,
how we feel. It should have
and
been.
vote for the park. I think you could have combined possibly the streets, police together. I think everybody has their own wants and needs. You talk to a lot of families, and they would vote for the other two, right?
Right.
So yeah, I think individually probably makes more sense in the future to look at something like that. Just don't add the pork to
especially in this time of age, I think, as people are like, okay, we're getting it up here. We don't need to be getting it down here.
They see it at the federal government side where they're adding hundreds of things into one bill, and then they think they're getting things hidden in this 5-vote thing in Norfolk. They get people in their head, and I just think it was
one thing I was told too, and I know this came from the finance department, is so it would have been a little less expensive to do it with those 4 together. So the bonding, and I don't want to get too deep into that.
No, you don't have
finance.
To. Yeah, that's fine.
But I do know that it would have been less expensive to do it that way than 4 individual ones.
Gotcha. So I guess there was probably reasons for both sides of it, and I understand that. But you could just tell it definitely caused an uproar on both sides.
I agree.
So it got people talking anyway. So that's good. Can you give some thoughts into how the oversight of the North Fork Transit was being handled, and how do you think it should be handled going forward?
Well, I mean, that was horrible. That was horrible. That what happened. Just, it's inexcusable, but ultimately it comes down to, again, I'll use the term. I mean, the city owes its citizens some type of transportation. I just actually spoke with an individual today in a smaller community, and she says her mom's passed away now, but she said her mom used the transit, and the first day that she talked to her, she said, "Mom, where did you go?" She goes, "Well, I used the transit." And she was like, "Well, why didn't you call me?" And she explained her day, and she said, I finally understood my mom just wanted independence, right? Mm-hmm. She just wanted to be not dependent on her daughter every time. So, you hear stories like that, makes you think that, moving forward, this is something our community needs. Mm-hmm. Just last week, I was in the transits in their dispatch center, and I talked to them for probably half hour. Unbelievable. They're turning people away, right? They have way more demand than what they can accompany right now. So they're trying to work with the equipment, I guess, if you will. It's more of a scheduled pickup now. There's no route. I think they would like to do like one flex route if they possibly could, but I think you'll see it expand a little bit. Probably was set up better this time around. I think let's grow into it and see what we need.
That's the biggest thing.
It feels like that's exactly what's going on. They're reaching a point where they could use even a larger facility. They could use probably a few more workers, but they're getting to that point, and that's a good thing.
Right. I agree. And I definitely think we need transportation. I don't know if I don't think it should be on the city, like the actual city itself to do it, but I think it does a third party like that, I think is a good way to do it.
I agree. I don't necessarily think the city needs to operate this particular organization. If they are struggling, I know they're getting reimbursed and things are going well for them, but when we gave them that $100,000, there was employees that weren't getting paid, right? So we kind of felt like we needed to help them get back on their feet, because their reimbursement, my understanding, it's kind of got a lag in it. It's got a month or two lag. They have to incur the cost before they can get reimbursed. Yep. Well, those employees, and there was a fair amount of them that had worked and just didn't get any payment. So I guess I feel like we did the right thing.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. You guys did the right thing. But again, like you said, I think they just hit the ground running a little too hard and fast, and I think growing into it is the way to go.
They probably did, but take away what happened. And if that didn't happen, would they have grown into how they started? I don't know. But
Yeah.
it's just such a tragic event that
Right.
it's hard to overcome that.
Right. Definitely leaves a sour taste in the mouth.
Yeah, it certainly does.
I think it's a good thing. I think they're going to do well. I think the right people are in place handling the finances and all that kind of stuff. So
I think they're running in the right direction.
yeah, definitely. Do you feel that we have an aging demographic, and how can we make sure we have population growth in the future?
Well, population growth part, kind of go back to the affordable housing. I think that is something we need to make sure that we have available, because people need a place to live. And I think that's really important. The, I don't know, aging demographic.
Cole, will you bring up the demographics real fast?
I don't know if anything jumps out at me like
we don't think we have an aging demographic per se. Can you see the percentages on the right?
Yeah.
Okay. Our concern was maybe in that persons under 5 at that 7%. We thought that should or maybe a little higher to keep the population growth going.
I would agree. I mean, I think, you look forward, the 0 to 5, it's not a very big window though either.
Right.
So
right.
Should that be more 0 to 10?
Yeah, maybe.
Potentially.
I don't like how they did their numbers. Their age gaps are huge, like the 18 or the 19 to 64.
It seems a little skewed there, but
yeah.
You look at the younger population. I think you have the Growing Together initiative that was put together, and that's aimed at trying to retain our youth. And I think they're doing a very good job. They're working hard at it. I don't know about 5 and under percent. Obviously, I think another factor that comes into play is families just aren't as big as they used to be, right?
That's usually what we get to, or the people are having kids later in life.
Yeah,
too.
a little more professional. Even they maybe opt not to have children or whatever it may be. But yeah,
and I think I think we're in a good spot. From what we saw, most of them are sitting at the national average, or close to it. So I think we're in a good spot. I think we do a good job as a city so far. The problem sometimes we hear is not retaining people after college.
I would agree. I think the lure of Lincoln and Omaha in our own state definitely is a factor. But so with my wife being in real estate, it's interesting the number of young couples that she is showing homes to, and they're not just locals looking for a place. They're coming into Norfolk.
Okay.
So I know it's a small sample size, but it's happening.
Well, if they're coming to her, they're coming to others too, right? Then probably.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. So no, she gets them all, but now it's kind of interesting to watch. I mean, I know of one that we just helped recently, and they're looking forward to moving here.
That's good.
So
are they coming from far away, close by?
From within the state.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Do we see a lot coming from other states to Norfolk?
Oddly enough, you're starting to see a little Colorado move into Nebraska. So I think Californians are pushing into Colorado, and it just keeps moving east.
Further. Yeah. That's interesting. How can Norfolk stay competitive with other communities for new business, innovation, public safety, and population size?
Well, I think we need to keep our economic growth moving forward. That's vital. We need to keep pushing for businesses, stay competitive. I think I'll probably go back to affordable housing. People are going to live where they can afford to live. And so if we want them to look at Norfolk and be serious, we need to we need to make it a place where they can live and enjoy their quality of life here. That's, I would say economic development first, but overall, I think you got to look at the person and say, what do they want? Right. I think the schools are a big thing. Again, I'll use my wife as an example. She was just showing, she had a tour, of a professional that was looking at buying a home here. And so she takes them to the parks, show them that they're thinking that's great. Norfolk's done a nice job there. Introduces the schools to them, and that's very important to them. And we have some great schools to show off to them. Then take them through our downtown. That's impressive. And it's like, this person wants, Norfolk's on the short list, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of what we can offer. So I think we got to be very cognizant of what the people want, and that kind of will dictate how we stay competitive.
That makes sense. What do you like about what has been done in Northeast Nebraska, and what do you feel could be done better? And we discuss a lot about like the hub of Norfolk,
Mm-hmm.
outside communities that are close by that come to Norfolk for either jobs or shopping or things like that.
Well, I think that those communities make Norfolk, right? I mean, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be who we are today. But it's a two-way street too. So we have to continue to push our economic development, because those smaller communities don't necessarily have the infrastructure or the gas lines to bring in a business for their residents to work at. So that's Norfolk's responsibility, I think, is to get very active in that economic development, bring these places in if they are willing to. Those communities can come here and work, and they can still go back and live in their small town if they want, but it's a good collaboration. Fourth time I've used that word, that we can work together and get this stuff done. I think, look at the Norfolk Crush plant, right? I mean, what a fantastic thing for Northeast Nebraska, but didn't necessarily, Norfolk's going to be able to send workers out there, but we don't get any direct feedback from them. That, tax goes to the county, and
Yeah.
but I think that is a decision that's made for Northeast Nebraska, and that wasn't made just for Norfolk.
Definitely. I'm gonna ask another question on that. Do you feel that when you are making decisions on the council, obviously you're making it for the whole city, you're not always just thinking about your own ward. Do you think of the other communities as you're making decisions?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, again, like I said, I think when we look at that development, they ask us, hey, how can you, the city, help us bring this business to Norfolk? And they're asking about the schools. They're asking about workforce. Well, if it wasn't for those communities, and we are using that workforce that's out there. So yeah, those decisions are made with those communities in mind.
That's good. Transparency and accountability are very important. What steps would you take to make sure the public is informed?
Yeah, so the transparency part, I think we've done a pretty good job with we probably had more open public meetings than we've ever had in the last couple of years. I know when it came to, Benjamin Avenue, the streets, the parks, a lot of public input sessions were held and were out there. So I think there's a lot of transparency there. The other thing I would say is the community and the council just need to work together, right? I mean, and we need to trust each other. It's, trust is the glue to life. It really is. I mean, and it's essential for an effective communication to happen. So I would encourage them all to call, email, text, and I like getting those because we get a chance to understand what they want. You know, people want to be heard, and they need to be heard. But you know, I'll just put it this way: we don't know what they want unless they say, right? You'll never understand the importance when we're at a city council meeting. I love it when people get up and talk and they express their concerns and their opinions, because you get to hear their side of it, right?
Yep.
But when people come and publicly support something or have an issue with it, and you have to take that into consideration. And so that transparency does go both ways. I know they and I say they, the narrative out there is that we're not being transparent. I don't know if I understand it, because if you have a question, call.
I think it's some are afraid to maybe call and voice their opinion. They'd rather be in an echo chamber of a social media page or something like that, and
Don't
just
doubt that.
Yeah, and just have negativity or whatever it is on both positive or negative.
We've talked about it a lot. It's the citizen's responsibility too to become informed, and that's kind of why we're doing this. And we've always done this.
I think this is very transparent.
We
right?
want to be informed, so it's always kind of been the thing, and I kind of go back to like if you want to bitch about something, then you got to do something about it, right?
Exactly.
Whatever it is, like you got to find some way to do something.
I've used that same saying quite a few times. That
Yep.
You know, if you want to complain about it, step up. You know, find a solution.
Yep.
Right.
Or even, I mean, voice your concerns somewhere that it can make change, as opposed to just comments on a post. Comments on a post don't really get you anywhere.
No, they don't.
Come to a city council meeting or whatever.
And stand up there and talk if that is what you like to do. But, you know, I think we've all been a victim of this, where, you know, you maybe get a text and it comes across different than what was intended. And so I think phone calls,
I hate texting.
Yeah.
Phone calls are in
they serve
person.
their purpose, but they can also just give the wrong context of things. And I'm afraid that sometimes that happens, even with the social media posts, that somebody makes a comment and it doesn't get perceived the correct way.
Yeah, and then you spend another 10 posts trying to explain yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get it. Or you hit the all caps button and people think or somebody's yelling at each other. So yeah, I get it. Do you feel that Norfolk is heading in the right direction, and where do you see the city in 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I do think we're heading in the right direction. I think you look at the population growth that we have. I think that's fantastic. So I can answer two questions here with one answer, maybe. I think in 5 years, we're going to see our population continue to grow. What was the first part of the question?
It was, do you feel that Norfolk is heading in the right direction?
Heading in the right direction.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the direction's right. Again, we get into that economic growth. I think we're doing well. You look at our downtown; it's continuing to expand. Just like you're saying, will it go to Madison? Will it go to Brush? I think you'll see it. It is heading in the right direction. You look at the number of houses, and we put over not necessarily houses, but housing units. So that can include apartments. But we've put up over 1,000 in the last 7 years, and believe it or not, we're not done. I mean, it's still moving in that direction. So growth, yeah, I would say we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely. So those are all the questions that Vance and I had prepared for you. We do have some listener questions to go through. Now, these are going to be verbatim as they were given to us from the listeners. We won't be able to provide too much context and things like that, but we made sure we asked these questions as they were given to us.
Okay.
What do you see as the greatest need for Norfolk?
The greatest need. So do we go back for streets again?
Probably. And some of these are repetitive, but
yeah, I think that's probably on the short list. I think I know I'm sounding repetitive, but affordable housing, the streets, I think that's our biggest need. I just do.
I don't see it as repetitive because we've had this with a lot of people. It's just what you feel is important. I don't think it's a repetitive thing if you're answering the questions that way. Are we missing the mark when it comes to caring for citizens?
Oh, I don't think so. I guess I think we're doing what we can as a city. I think that I'll use the transit. I don't need to use it, but I think a lot of people need to use it. So I think we're taking care of that segment. Growing Together initiative that's trying to keep our youth here, trying to educate them, trying to help them stay in Norfolk. I think we're
and we've kind of touched on this one too, and it's going to kind of sound repetitive again, but apartment needs were a big push for Norfolk, but the cost of rent for a 600 square foot apartment is $1,100. Do you see a way to fix the housing problem?
Yeah, just like all rent, supply and demand is kind of your main thing there. One thing I would like to see, because I personally believe we need to find a way to rehab older homes. I know we have a state code we got to follow when it comes to insulation and plumbing. I get that, and I don't want anybody to shortchange a home while they're trying to renovate it, and we do need to keep those things in place. But with today's building cost, we cannot expect people to buy a brand new home, and nor should they, right? If they're starting out, they probably should be buying an older home.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem you run into is they can't go to the bank to get that loan for the home and then go back to the bank and get that home remodeling loan, 40, 50,000, whatever it might be.
Yep.
I would like to see the person that's selling that home be able to renovate that. The problem is by the time they go through all the code, and I'm not saying it's necessarily the city's fault, but somewhere I'd like to just see us relax that a little bit to the point where maybe instead of costing $40,000 to fix that home up, maybe it only costs $20,000.
Right.
And pass that along to make that a little bit more affordable.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I could almost guarantee in any code in any industry and anything that has regulations, there's always, we could cut regulation and save money. Common sense regulation. Like, let's get back to common sense regulation. Like,
so if you tear down, for instance, an interior wall, or I should say an exterior wall, and you have to replace the sheetrock on it, but it's got a 2x4 walls,
And then you got to go to like 2x6s, right?
Yeah. So you're going to go through the expense of extending that wall before you insulate it again. Yeah, by code. But when you took that sheetrock off,
was it
plaster,
fine or was it bad?
There probably was no insulation there anyway.
Right.
Even if there was, it was thin.
Yeah.
So you actually bettered the situation. I'm just using that as an example, not necessarily
That's a good example
on
though.
the insulation
But there's a lot of those type of things.
There are.
And it's not only in housing. Like
Right.
that's kind of where but yeah, it's crazy. It's insane.
I honestly think that is a really good pathway to get that affordable housing, and I think there's people that would be willing to work on them, but they start on a project and it ends up costing them more than they expected.
Well, or if you find something else that's wrong, you think you're going to fix one thing, and then you get it opened up, and there's whatever else, and then it turns into more and more and more.
Now that wall's open up, let's just go ahead and update that electrical too while we're at it.
Yeah, exactly. What kind of community involvement can we expect from you?
So I'm pretty involved in the community. I get a chance to go to a lot of events. Went to the senior citizen open house just the other day, and I'll go from open houses to Faith Regional Gala. So I will do that. I will be out in the community a lot. One thing too that I guess I pride myself on too when it comes to community involvement is my wife does a really good job of being on fundraisers and boards, and we get to meet a lot of people that way, and good and bad, but she always tells people she runs into, just call Frank if you have a question on the city. So I feel like my community involvement, there's actually two of us out there,
right?
Kind of pushing the narrative. Hey, please contact if you have any questions. So I do like that we're involved together, and she's supporting me in my role and also encouraging people to reach out. So I think that community involvement's really good. The other thing I would say is this, I was elected to represent, my area. And I think I've done a good job of that. I've been very fortunate, but I have yet to miss a council meeting. And so I'm dedicated. They basically, if you will, elected me to do this job, and I'm going to do it. Right. So I take a lot of pride and responsibility to represent them.
Good. Are you open to actively showing support to all diverse groups in the community?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think in that arena, there's a phrase that I actually have up on my desk. And I did it not knowing why I did it, but I just saw it, the phrase, and I thought, and that just makes so much sense. And that phrase says, no one ever makes a difference by being like everyone else. And I thought, that's so true in so many different areas. And, culturally, I think this is one where I think it's just great.
It's a good one. I like that one a lot.
Yeah.
And this one's kind of along the same lines, just worded a little differently. What support will you provide in regards to minorities in the community to make them feel represented?
Well, I think we need to, take a look at any cultural event that may come out there and participate. And again, community involvement. I think the Arts Council has done a nice job with the fact that, art is something that can be enjoyed by all ages, all cultures. It's a common language, right? It's, so I think that's one way that will help. I just kind of give you a little example. So my wife and I were invited to, and I'm going to not say this correctly.
It's okay.
but quinceañera.
Oh, quinceañera?
Yeah, you said it much better than I did. And had never been to one before. So we went up there and took part of it. And what, I heard it, teenage girl becoming, into a woman, however it's phrased. But hearing about it is one thing, but to actually sit through the entire thing, what a neat experience. I mean, I couldn't stop talking about that for a long time. How impressive the family, the tradition, and everything. And I thought, man, I wish I had that kind of tradition in my family.
There's a lot that goes into those, right?
Yeah. It was a beautiful event.
Yeah.
But I think, so I don't know if to answer your question, but
it's a good answer.
Yeah. I really like that. And I would encourage that, in our community.
Definitely. So those are all the listener questions. Now we're going to get a little more political. These are questions that we ask all of the people that have been on this podcast, not just the candidates. We've asked this to every guest that's been on the podcast. How do you feel about where the state of our country is right now? And do you feel that we are being well represented at the federal level?
Well, I don't like the state where we're at in the federal government. I mean, we got a lot of issues. Starts from the top, and I didn't vote for the guy. Let's put it that way. I don't like the way it's being run. And I think the most obvious thing, if you look at it, that border crisis, that is a bad deal down there, and just nothing's being done, and it's just wrong.
And nothing's being done, and it can be done.
It can be done. Yeah. And so that lack of leadership, I think, it's horrible. The other thing you run into is the parties. You got so many lobbyists coming in there. You don't even know at the end of the day which side of the fence that they're really on. And then even within their own party, they're divided.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think it's kind of a mess, but I will tell you on the federal level though, I probably couldn't speak more highly of, I think Pete Ricketts is doing a great job. I think Mike Flood's doing a fantastic job. I mean, you talk about good representatives for that federal government, I think I don't think we could have found better individuals. And I know Deb Fisher's there too. I don't really know Deb, but and then I think, at our state level, I think Rob Dover's doing a fantastic job down there. He's very active in what he's doing. So I think our representation is pretty good.
And then going back to the party, you brought up the parties. That was the next question. Do you feel that the two-party system that's in place still works in today's time?
Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of a tough one.
That's a tough one, especially when you brought up how are we really sure it's a two-party system?
I don't know.
Are they rubbing each other's back? Is it, you do this for me, I'll do this for you?
Yeah, are there really conservatives and liberals anymore? I don't know. Or what's the lobbyist have to do with those decisions that are being made? And I don't know.
I like
what
to
the
call
right
it.
answer is.
I like to call it the uniparty. And when they get to DC, they all stab us in the back, no matter what side of the fence we're on together. We could be completely different sides, you and I sitting across from the table, and they're going to be on a different side because they care about them in DC and not us.
Well, I think if I need a bill passed and you need a bill passed, that somehow we're going to work together, and I'll support yours, you'll support mine, and I don't know. It's a tough. Speculating, obviously, but I don't know.
Definitely tough. I don't know how to fix it. We've gone through a bunch of different things and
nothing
really know besides putting term limits in and cutting it off at the head, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I can guarantee you we're not going to fix it tonight. So
we're up a creek and the pedal's already gone. So,
where do you see yourself going in the future? Are you enjoying where you are? Do you see yourself staying in Northeast Nebraska?
Oh yeah. I'll stay in Northeast Nebraska. Obviously born and raised here. My wife's born and raised right in Norfolk. Our families are close by. So, and Norfolk's just treated us very well. And we got good friends here. Do not see any reason to move away.
That's good. So now we want to give you a couple minutes to give whatever your last closing thoughts to the listeners, kind of what you're running on, or just give you a couple minutes to kind of give your thoughts to the listeners.
Well, I would basically say on that topic, I would probably start off with the fact that I think our current council, our group that we have right now is a very strong council. I think there's a lot of input, a lot of concern. I think they each and every one of them are looking out for the best interest of the people they represent. I truly believe that. So I like the group of people that are there. There's no agendas. They vote for what they think is right and what they're representative for. I guess I'd kind of like to take an opportunity to thank the voters that did vote me in for my first term, and I would ask for their vote again. I appreciate that. I'm going to support the community any way I can, and I feel like I have an obligation to make Norfolk better than it was when I got there. So I think that's my goal, is to improve every day. I think the next term is going to be one where I will have learned a lot in my first term, and I'll apply that knowledge to be even a better representative for them. The one thing I guess I'd kind of like to end with is just a little history that both of my grandfathers were county commissioners for Cedar County. And, so I think, I feel like there's maybe a little family tradition here of serving our communities. And I would hope that, they'd be proud of me for what I'm doing and how I'm trying to help our community.
That's great. That's kind of a cool story.
Yeah.
Kind of a nice little run there. This wasn't so bad, was it?
No.
Being on the show?
No, not at all. In fact, I didn't think that I'd have this much to say, but it just comes out.
Yeah.
You guys are good.
Once the questions start flowing, it's kind of easy just to start talking, right?
Well, you guys are pretty easy to talk to.
We try to. We try not to be too aggressive.
Not to be too harsh.
Too harsh. But we really appreciate you making time to be here today, and giving us and the community your thoughts.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. And if you have an opportunity again in the future, I'd certainly.
Yeah, we'd love to have all of you guys back in the future once you've, if you get elected, have you back on, see how things are going. I think that'd be kind of a cool thing where we bring one ward on maybe once a month or whatever and get everybody's thoughts once things are going.
I think it'd be great.
Definitely.
That'd be cool.
But again, we really appreciate you being on here, making the time. Big thanks to our producer, Cole Peterson, my co-host, Vance Neidig, and we will see you guys next week.